The Battle of the Spiral Nexus began when Admiral Hayes deliberately brought the human fleet into the most strategic star system in the galaxy. The Nexus controlled 7 major hyperspace routes and served as the gateway to the galactic core. Whoever held this system could control travel between the galaxy's major civilizations. Supreme Admiral Morthek commanded the Dominion's elite Void Guard from his flagship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed every other ship in the system. Around him, 1,000 vessels from 47 different species formed the largest battle fleet in recorded galactic history. They had come to end the human rebellion once and for all. The human fleet looked pitifully small in comparison. Admiral Hayes had only 300 ships, many of them converted merchant vessels and rebuilt colony defense craft. But appearances were deceiving. These ships carried the awakened memories of an ancient empire and crews who were remembering how to fight like their ancestors. Commander Carl Davis led the human fighter squadrons into battle with a precision that seemed impossible. His pilots moved through the 3-dimensional battlefield like they had been born in space. They flew patterns that no flight school had ever taught, accessing combat memories that were 10,000 years old. The Dominion forces opened fire with weapons designed to crack planets. Their energy beams lit up space like artificial stars, each shot carrying enough power to vaporize a city. The alien commanders expected to see human ships disappear in balls of superheated plasma. Instead, they watched their weapons strike adaptive shields that absorbed the energy and grew stronger. Captain Lisa Ward commanded a battle group that seemed to exist in several places at once. Her ships appeared to split into multiple copies. During combat, using dimensional phase technology that the ancient humans had perfected before their fall, the Dominion crews found themselves fighting enemies that existed in parallel realities. The battle raged across multiple star systems as both fleets used advanced drives to reposition themselves throughout the Nexus. Human ships that appeared to be destroyed would regenerate through quantum reconstruction protocols. Vessels that seemed to be single units separated into multiple independent fighting platforms when the situation demanded it. Supreme Admiral Morthek watched his invincible fleet dissolve under assault patterns that incorporated tactical elements from throughout galactic history. The humans fought like they had studied every battle ever fought by every species in the galaxy. Their strategies adapted faster than his commanders could respond. The Void Guards' defeat was so complete that surviving vessels fled the battlefield rather than face total annihilation. Of the 1,000 ships that had entered the Nexus, fewer than 50 escaped to carry news of the disaster back to Dominion space. The elite forces that had never known defeat were scattered like leaves before a hurricane. Dr. Alice Cooper monitored the technological awakening that was transforming human civilization throughout the galaxy. Colonial worlds that had struggled with basic terraforming suddenly possessed environmental modification capabilities that surpassed anything achieved by elder galactic species. The dormant human potential was manifesting across their entire population as genetic locks released in response to species-wide survival stimulus. On Earth, massive construction projects began as humans remembered how to build on a galactic scale. Orbital shipyards that would have taken decades to complete were finished in months. New technologies emerged from research labs as scientists accessed knowledge that had been locked in their DNA for 10,000 years. The aftermath of the spiral Nexus battle saw the collapse of Dominion authority throughout the galaxy. Client species that had served the Dominion for thousands of years declared their independence. Ancient grudges erupted into open rebellion as oppressed worlds finally found the courage to fight back. President Elena Martinez addressed the new Galactic Assembly from the rebuilt chambers on Nexus Prime. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to hear humanity's vision for the future. She spoke of cooperation instead of domination, of trade instead of tribute, of freedom instead of oppression. The humans did not come as conquerors seeking to replace the Dominion with their own empire. They came as liberators, offering protection to species that had suffered under alien rule while establishing trade and cultural exchange agreements that respected the autonomy of all sapient beings. Captain Dan Moore commanded the exploration, fleets that ventured beyond the galactic rim. His mission was to seek other scattered remnants of ancient human civilization while establishing contact with species that had hidden from Dominion expansion for millennia. The galaxy was proving to be a larger and more complex place than anyone had imagined. The first contact protocols that Dan's crews followed were based on principles recovered from ancient human archives. The old empire had been built on mutual respect and beneficial trade rather than conquest and exploitation. These same principles would guide humanity's return to galactic prominence. Ambassador Peter Collins worked tirelessly to establish the new galactic government. His negotiating teams included representatives from every species that chose to join the alliance. The humans provided military protection and advanced technology, but political power was shared equally among all members. The transformation was not without its challenges. Some Dominion loyalists refused to accept the new order and continued to fight guerrilla campaigns against human forces. Other species worried that humanity would eventually reveal its true nature and become as oppressive as their predecessors. Trust would take time to build, but the momentum was unstoppable. Human colonies throughout the galaxy were awakening to their true heritage in sharing their recovered technologies with allied species. Medical advances that had been suppressed by the Dominion were saving millions of lives. Environmental restoration techniques were healing worlds that had been damaged by centuries of exploitation. The final scene of humanity's transformation took place on the memorial world that had once been the Dominion capital. Admiral Hayes stood in the restored human monument, reading the names of those who had died in the original assault on Earth's colonies. The memorial bore a simple inscription that captured humanity's emergence into their true galactic heritage. The inscription read, "We are not the species we once were, but we have become the species we were always meant to be." Below those words were listed the names of every human who had died fighting for freedom, from the first colonists who fell to Zephyrian raiders to the pilots who gave their lives at the spiral nexus. The stars no longer held fear for humanity. They held infinite possibility. The ancient human empire had fallen to civil war and internal strife, but the new galactic civilization would be different. It would be built on cooperation and mutual respect rather than domination and fear. Children on human worlds grew up learning about their species' true history. They studied the mistakes that had led to the fall of the ancient empire and the principles that would prevent those mistakes from being repeated. The future belonged to all sapient species, working together toward common goals. The galaxy had been reborn, and humanity had finally come home to the stars that had always been, waiting for their return. The age of the Dominion was over. The age of cooperation had begun. Captain Steve Johnson stared at the ruins in disbelief. His deep space exploration team had been searching for resources in the galactic core when they found the ancient structures. The buildings were clearly artificial, but built with technology that seemed impossibly advanced. What shocked him most was how familiar the architecture looked. The proportions were designed for beings exactly like humans. Dr. Helen Brooks led the archaeological team that examined the ruins. Her scanners revealed metal alloys that matched theoretical frameworks developed by human scientists. The energy conduits followed patterns that human engineers had discovered through decades of trial and error. Everything about the ancient city suggested that humans had built it, but that was impossible. Humanity had only left Earth 50 years ago. The discovery sent shockwaves through the human fleet. Admiral Hayes ordered a complete investigation while trying to keep the news secret from Dominion intelligence networks. If the aliens learned what the exploration team had found, it would change the entire nature of the war. Deep in the ruins, Helen's team found something that made her hands shake. It was a library, its crystalline storage matrices still intact after thousands of years. The data inside contained star charts, technical manuals, and historical records. All of it was written in languages that human computers could translate. With surprising ease, the records told an incredible story. Long before the current Dominion existed, humans had ruled a vast empire that spanned half the galaxy. They had been explorers and warriors, scientists and diplomats. Their ships had carried human colonists to 1,000 worlds. Their technology had been the envy of every other species, but the empire had not fallen to external enemies. It had destroyed itself in a civil war that lasted for centuries. Brother fought brother across the stars, while alien species watched and waited. When the fighting finally ended, humanity was scattered and broken. The survivors fled to the edges of the galaxy and tried to forget what they had once been. The emerging Dominion had made sure that forgetting was permanent. They hunted down human colonies and destroyed any technology that might remind humanity of its heritage. They rewrote history and suppressed evidence of human achievements. Earth became a prison where humans lived in ignorance of their true nature. Major Tony Clark's Marines captured the Dominion. Archive world of Vale Shara after a brief but vicious battle. The planet contained the central records of galactic history, including files that had been classified for 10,000 years. What they found confirmed humanity's worst suspicions and greatest hopes. Dominion had not conquered the galaxy through superior strength. They had inherited it from the ruins of human civilization. Every major technological advance claimed by the Dominion had originally been developed by human scientists. The quantum drives, the energy shields, the advanced weapon systems, all of it had once belonged to humanity. Dr. Nicole Stone worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the research ship U.S. Discovery. Her job was to understand why humans were suddenly displaying capabilities that should have been impossible. The answer lay in human genetics, in dormant sequences that activated under extreme stress. The ancient humans had done more than build an empire. They had modified themselves, encoding technological knowledge directly into their DNA. The information lay sleeping in human cells, waiting for the right conditions to awaken. War and the threat of extinction provided those conditions. Crews were instinctively operating advanced systems with minimal training because the knowledge was already inside them. Pilots flew ships with impossible precision because their ancestors had flown similar vessels 10,000 years ago. Engineers built weapons that defied galactic understanding because they were remembering designs that predated current civilization. The revelation explained everything. The quantum stealth systems that seemed impossible were actually reconstructed memories of ancient human technology. The adaptive armor that repaired itself was based on principles that human scientists had discovered long before the Dominion existed. The coordination between separated fleets came from genetic memory of how human battle groups had once fought together across the stars. Vexstar received intelligence reports that filled him with terror. The humans were not just rebels or primitives playing with stolen technology. They were the descendants of the species that had once ruled the galaxy. The sleeping giant was waking up, and when it fully awakened, the current order of things would. The Dominion's most elite forces received orders to destroy the human fleet at any cost. Supreme Admiral Morthek commanded the Void Guard, a 1,000-ship armada that represented the accumulated military might of 47 species. They were the Dominion's final answer to threats that conventional forces could not handle. The Void Guard had crushed the Centaurian Republic and burned the crystal cities of Andromeda. Their ships carried weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been breached. They moved toward human space, like the fist of an angry god, ready to end the rebellion before it could spread any further. But Admiral Hayes was ready. For them, the human fleet had grown as more colonies contributed ships and crews to the cause. Hidden shipyards throughout human space were building vessels that incorporated recovered ancient technology. The awakening genetic memories allowed human engineers to construct weapons that their ancestors would have recognized. Captain Carl Davis commanded fighter squadrons that moved through space with precision that seemed supernatural. His pilots were accessing combat memories that went back 10,000 years. They flew with the skill of ancient aces whose experience lived on in human DNA, that the approaching battle would be more than a contest between fleets. It would be a confrontation between the galaxy's past and its future. The Dominion represented the old order, built on the suppression of human potential. The human fleet carried the memories of what the galaxy had once been and what it could become again. Dr. Alice Cooper monitored the changes taking place throughout human civilization. Colonial worlds that had struggled with basic technology suddenly possessed capabilities that surpassed anything the Dominion could offer. The genetic awakening was affecting the entire species, unlocking potential that had been dormant for millennia. The stage was set for a final confrontation that would determine whether humanity reclaimed its birthright or died trying to remember what it had once been. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see which legacy would prove stronger. 10,000 years of dominion, rule, or the awakening memory of human greatness. The defense of Kepler Station began at dawn. Captain Luke Patterson watched the alien fleet approach through the view screen of his command center. 300 Dominion ships moved toward his position in perfect formation. Behind them came the massive dreadnought that served as Admiral Kethmer's new flagship. The alien commander had returned with reinforcements and a burning need for revenge. Luke had only 50 ships to defend the station. The odds were impossible, but his orders were clear. Hold the station until Admiral Hayes arrived with the main fleet. Buy time with blood if necessary. Give the Admiral a chance to spring her trap. The station itself was a marvel of human engineering. Built in the shadow of a dying star, it served as a supply depot and communications hub for the growing human fleet. Its weapons could hurt the incoming aliens, but not enough to stop them. The real defense would have to come from Luke's ships and the courage of their crews. The battle began when the first alien missiles reached Kepler Station. The human point defense systems came alive, filling space with streams of energy that turned the missiles into brief flowers of flame. But more missiles followed, and energy beams that could crack planets. The station's shields flared and held, but Luke knew they would not last long. His ships moved to intercept the alien fleet. The human vessels danced between the massive alien dreadnoughts like fighters challenging giants. They struck hard and fast, then vanished into the quantum shadows before the aliens could respond. But there were too many enemies and too few humans. Ships began to die. The U's Defiant took a direct hit from an alien battle cruiser. Luke watched the ship break apart on his screen, taking 200 human souls with it into the dark. The UE's courage lasted longer, fighting 3 alien destroyers until her armor failed and her reactor went critical. The explosion took one of the alien ships with her. For 18 hours, the battle raged around Kepler Station. Luke's ships fought like wounded wolves, giving ground slowly and making the aliens pay for every meter. The station's weapons never stopped firing, but the alien fleet pressed closer with each passing hour. The shields began to fail. Fire started in the outer sections. The end was coming. Then Admiral Hayes arrived. The main human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like the wrath of an angry god. 200 fresh ships appeared in perfect battle formation, their weapons already charged and ready. But something was different about these vessels. They moved with a coordination that seemed impossible for separate ships. They fought as if controlled by a single mind. Admiral Kethmer saw his certain victory turn into disaster in the space of minutes. The human ships attacked from directions that should have been empty space. Their weapons hit with power that cracked the hulls of his strongest dreadnoughts. When his crews tried to return fire, they found nothing but shadows and echoes. The battle ended with the complete destruction of the alien fleet. Only a handful of Dominion ships escaped to carry word of the disaster back to Nexus Prime. Admiral Kethmer was not among the survivors. His flagship died with all hands when 3 human battle cruisers materialized inside its shields and fired at point-blank range. Chancellor Vextar received the reports in his Crystal Palace. The 3rd battle group was gone. The humans had somehow divided their fleet and struck at multiple targets across the galaxy at the same time. The coordination required for such operations suggested technology that defied understanding. On the world of Arcturus Prime, human ground forces landed and began securing Dominion supply depots. Major Tony Clark led Marines who moved through alien fortifications like ghosts. They seemed to know where every guard would be and which corridors to avoid. The Dominion defenders fought bravely, but found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Dr. Marcus Webb studied captured alien technology aboard his research ship. His teams worked around the clock to understand Dominion weapons and shields. What they found was impressive but limited. The aliens had perfected their technology thousands of years ago and then stopped innovating. They had grown comfortable with being the strongest and forgotten how to adapt. The human advantage was not just technological. It was psychological and tactical as well. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire history. Every culture on Earth had contributed something to the art of warfare. The combined knowledge of 10,000 years of human conflict had followed them to the stars. Lieutenant Commander Grace Miller led boarding actions against disabled alien vessels. The intelligence she gathered painted a disturbing picture of galactic society. The Dominion maintained control through fear and technological superiority. They had systematically suppressed military innovation among client species for thousands of years. Any world that showed signs of developing advanced weapons found itself facing Dominion peacekeepers. Any species that grew too strong was broken up and scattered across the galaxy. The Dominion had created a stable empire by ensuring that no one else could threaten their power, but they had never encountered a species like humanity. Humans had developed their technology in isolation, free from Dominion interference. They had been forced to innovate by the harsh realities of their own violent history. When they finally reached the stars, they brought with them weapons and tactics that the galaxy had never seen. The Zephyrian Empire found itself caught between advancing human forces and Dominion fleets, trying to establish defensive positions. The same aliens who had burned human colonies now begged for protection from their former masters. The irony was not lost on the human commanders who accepted their surrender. Ambassador Peter Collins worked tirelessly to build alliances with oppressed species throughout the galaxy. His messages of hope spread from world to world, carried by traitors and rebels who had suffered under Dominion rule. The galaxy was waking up to the possibility of freedom. On Earth, President Elena Martinez addressed the United Nations in a speech that would be remembered for generations. Humanity had taken its first steps toward becoming a galactic power. But with power came responsibility. Earth would not become another Dominion, ruling through fear and oppression. They would build something better. The war was far from over, but the tide had turned. The Dominion still had vast fleets and powerful allies, but they no longer seemed invincible. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy's rulers knew fear. They began to understand that they faced something more dangerous than another. Rebellion. They faced the awakening of humanity's true potential. Admiral Kethmer studied the star charts with growing annoyance. The human fleet was moving toward his position at a steady pace. Their ships appeared on his sensors like bright dots against the black of space. He counted 200 vessels, each one smaller than his smallest destroyer. The humans were either very brave or very stupid. Kethmer commanded the third battle group of the Dominion fleet. 800 ships followed his orders, each one tested in 100 battles across the galaxy. His crews had never known defeat. They had crushed rebellions by the spider-like Arachne and burned the crystal cities of the Vorthan Empire. These humans would be just another footnote in the long history of Dominion victories. The alien admiral prepared to broadcast the coming battle across the galaxy. When other young species saw the humans destroyed, they would remember their place in the cosmic order. The strong ruled and the weak obeyed. This was the way of things. Admiral Hayes watched the Dominion fleet take position near the gas giant. Helios. The alien ships formed perfect battle lines just as Captain Carter had predicted. They moved like a machine, beautiful and predictable and doomed. She gave the order to begin the dance. The human fleet split into smaller groups that spread across the star system. Each group moved in patterns that seemed random, but followed a plan that had been practiced 1,000 times. Colonel Sam Turner led the fighter squadrons that weaved between the larger ships like silver fish swimming through a coral reef. The fighters looked wrong to the alien sensors. They moved too fast for their size and changed direction without the normal physics of spaceflight. The Dominion crews had fought many species, but never encountered anything like these small human craft. They darted and spun through space in ways that should have torn them apart. Dr. Rachel Green sat in the command center of the UE Shadow, watching her instruments track the battle. The quantum stealth fields wrapped around the human ships like invisible cloaks. To the aliens, human vessels seemed to flicker in and out of existence. One moment a ship would be there, solid and real. The next moment it would be gone, vanishing into what looked like empty space. The technology was new, but the idea was old. Humans had been hiding from their enemies since the first cave dweller painted his face with mud to blend into the forest. Now they painted their ships with quantum fields and blended into the darkness between stars. Captain Amy Foster led the first real attack. Her battle group appeared behind the alien formation, like ghosts materializing from the void. The human weapons struck with power that shocked the Dominion crews. Their shields, designed to stop known galactic weapons, cracked and failed under the assault. The adaptive armor that Maya had designed absorbed the return fire and grew stronger. Alien crews sent frantic messages back to their commanders. The human weapons were impossible. They hit harder than anything that size should be able to generate. The human armor seemed to heal itself between attacks. When the aliens tried to target the human ships, their weapons found nothing but empty space. Admiral Kethmer received the reports with growing confusion. His sensors showed human ships in 12 different locations at once. Some of the readings had to be false, but which ones? His crews were fighting shadows and losing ships to enemies they could barely see. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Dominion had lost 40 ships, while the humans had lost none. The alien survivors fled toward their home bases, carrying stories that no one would believe. They spoke of human ships that existed in multiple places at the same time and weapons that grew more powerful with each shot. Captain Luke Patterson commanded the human ships that pursued the fleeing aliens. His orders were simple: let some escape, but make sure they carried the right message. The humans were no longer the weak species that hid behind Earth's defenses. Something had changed. Something dangerous. The reports reached the Dominion capital. World of Nexus Prime within days. Chancellor Vextar read them with growing alarm. The intelligence made no sense. Humans did not possess technology that could do these things. Their ships were crude, and their weapons were simple. Yet 40 Dominion vessels were gone, and not one human ship had been destroyed. Dr. Marcus Webb analyzed the wreckage from the Yonthi. Battle. His teams found pieces of Dominion armor and weapons scattered across the battlefield. The alien technology was advanced, but designed to fight enemies they understood. The Dominion had built their weapons to defeat shields and armor that worked in predictable ways. They had never faced adaptive systems that learned and improved during battle. The human weapons were different too. They combined known physics with approaches that no other species had tried. Human engineers thought in ways that seemed chaotic to alien minds. Where other species built elegant solutions, humans built crude ones that worked better. Where aliens sought perfection, humans sought victory. Lieutenant Commander Grace Miller led boarding parties onto disabled alien vessels. The crews they found were terrified and confused. They spoke of human ships that appeared from nowhere and weapons that defied the laws of physics. Some claimed the human vessels had split into multiple copies during the battle. Others swore the human weapons had grown stronger as the fight continued. The interrogations revealed important information about alien psychology. The Dominion species had grown comfortable with their technological superiority. They fought the same battles in the same ways for thousands of years. When faced with something genuinely new, they panicked. Ambassador Peter Collins was already making contact with other species that had suffered under Dominion rule. His messages spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The humans had fought the mighty Third Battle Group and won. If these newcomers could defeat the Dominion's best, perhaps other species could find the courage to resist as well. The galactic balance of power began to shift. Ancient grievances stirred as oppressed worlds remembered what freedom felt like. The human victory at Helios was more than a military triumph. It was proof that the Dominion could be beaten. Admiral Hayes studied the battle reports with quiet satisfaction. The first phase of her plan was complete. The aliens now knew that humans were dangerous, but they did not yet understand how dangerous. That knowledge would come later, when it was too late to matter. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship. He looked out at the stars and felt anger burning in his chest. 3 years had passed since the aliens attacked Earth's colonies. 3 years since millions of humans died while the galaxy watched and did nothing. The attack came without warning. The Zephyrian Empire swept down on the outer colonies like wolves hunting sheep. Their ships were bigger and stronger than anything humans had ever built. They burned cities from orbit and left nothing but ash where families once lived. When Earth begged the Galactic Dominion for help, they received only silence. The ancient treaties protected the strong and abandoned the weak. Jake remembered the day the news reached Earth. He was just a lieutenant then, fresh out of the academy with dreams of exploring the stars. Those dreams died when he saw the footage from New Haven Colony. Children running through burning streets. Parents searching for families that would never come home. The lucky ones died quickly. Admiral Lisa Hayes commanded the human fleet now. She stood tall on the bridge of her flagship, the U.E.'s Retribution. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her blue eyes held the cold fire of someone who had seen too much death. She watched as the last ships took their positions in the formation. 200 vessels hung in space around Titan, each one built from the wreckage of humanity's broken dreams. The ships looked different from the old Earth fleet. Dr. Kevin Walsh had worked day and night in secret labs hidden throughout the solar system. His quantum drives could move ships faster than anything the galaxy had seen. Engineer Maya Rodriguez designed armor that could heal itself when damaged. Every human ship carried weapons that the aliens had never faced before, the Galactic Dominion. Council met on their crystal world of Nexus Prime. 47 alien species sent representatives to discuss the growing human threat. Chancellor Vex Star looked like a giant insect wearing robes of gold. His compound eyes reflected no emotion as he read the intelligence reports. The humans were building ships and training soldiers. They seemed to be preparing for war. The other council members laughed when they heard this news. Humans had only reached the stars 50 years ago. They were children playing with toys they barely understood. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had crushed rebellions by species far older and stronger than humanity. What could these primitive creatures possibly do? Captain Ben Carter flew his scout ship through the dark spaces between stars. His job was to watch the alien patrols and learn their patterns. What he saw made him smile grimly. The Dominion fleets moved in straight lines like parade formations. Their commanders followed ancient battle plans that never changed. They fought the same way their ancestors had fought. For thousands of years, Ben sent his reports back to Admiral Hayes. The aliens expected humans to hide behind their defenses and wait for death. They thought the human fleet would break apart in panic when faced with superior numbers. They were wrong on both counts. President Elena Martinez stood before the cameras in the rebuilt command center on Luna. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but her voice carried the strength of all humanity when she spoke to the remaining colonies. The time for hiding was over. Earth would not beg for mercy from aliens who saw humans as nothing more than insects to be crushed. The human fleet began to move. Jake watched the stars change position as his ship accelerated away from Titan. Around him, 200 vessels formed into battle groups that had practiced together for months. Every captain knew their job. Every crew had trained until the movements became automatic. They were ready. The Dominion had made one critical mistake. They thought humans were weak because they were new to space travel. They forgot that humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years before they ever left Earth. Every battle tactic, every strategy, every hard lesson learned in blood on 100 battlefields, all of that knowledge traveled with humanity to the stars. Dr. Rachel Green monitored the stealth systems from her ship. The quantum fields made human vessels nearly invisible to alien sensors. Maya's adaptive armor could change color and shape to match the background of space. The human fleet moved like ghosts through the darkness between worlds. The first alien patrol never knew what hit them. Captain Amy Foster led the attack with surgical precision. Her ships appeared from empty space, struck hard, and vanished again before the aliens could respond. The few survivors who escaped brought tales of impossible human technology back to their commanders. Admiral Hayes received the reports with satisfaction. The first phase was complete. The aliens now knew that humans were no longer hiding behind Earth's defenses. They would have to respond, and when they did, they would find surprises waiting for them. The war that reshaped the galaxy had begun. Humanity stepped out of the shadows and into the light of 1,000 stars. They carried with them the memory of every life lost, every world burned, every child who would never see another sunrise. The aliens had awakened something they did not understand and could not control. The storm was coming, and it wore a human face.